see. Okay. Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Environmental Answers podcast. My name is Tiana Alame. I'm the CEO and founder of Environmental Answers. We're on a mission to accelerate the use of more sustainable products, services, and ideas. And today we have someone who's going to bring in an excellent idea. I'm super excited to talk to Chef Netta today about zero waste nourishment. Hi, Chef. How are you doing today?
I am doing so well, Tiana. How are you doing?
It's another day in paradise. I'm borrowing
Yes,
that from a good friend.
yes, yes.
We are enjoying this day. Happy Black History Month. It's February. I mean, the year is
Absolutely.
going by so fast.
Already. It is.
Already. It is. I would like to first start off by, getting to know you a little bit and how
Sure.
you became a chef and your whole background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because what attracted me to you, I met you at an event, was the fact that like the food was so good, but it
Thank
also had a little bit of a background. So I'm really interested in hearing a little bit about you and how you became a chef.
Oh, okay. So fun fact about me, I love Julia Childs. I remember my earliest memory of cooking was being at my aunt's daycare, which was in her home. And PBS was, always playing. So we're watching Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, whatever. And I remember at whatever 4 years old, stopping what I was doing and holding onto my blanket and watching Julia Childs like do her thing. I thought she was just the most amazing human being. Like Mr. Rogers, whatever, Snorefest. But Julia Childs, I was just like, oh my gosh, who is this woman? She's just like so animated and authentically herself. And that really is what started my trajectory into becoming a chef. Growing up in the South, having a garden in my backyard, not going out to eat because mama always said there's food at the house. Uh, and so now I can appreciate those things. But that kind of morphed into going to culinary school because I did want to do more and learn about other cultures and cuisines. And so I did. The unfortunate part about culinary school is they teach you a lot about French cuisines, European cuisines. There is little to none about Southern and certainly no African.
Oh,
And, this was 20 plus years ago. So hopefully things have changed. But that kind of created the search for me to say, wait a minute, other countries eat, and whatever they eat, I want to know more about it. And so I've been on a quest to do that. So that's how I got started.
oh man, that's pretty dynamic. I know for me, I hadn't really thought about that. I have a friend who went to culinary school and I think yeah, she's a French pastry chef. So like to your point, I need to probably follow up her and ask her like, did they teach you about like Southern cuisine or African cuisine or cuisine from all over the place? So my biggest thing right now is asking you a little bit more about the zero waste part. I know that when I met you at the event, your the things that you were using, it was reducing, and something I'm really passionate about is the environment. So anytime I see someone who's leaning towards thinking about the environment as they're doing the thing, I was curious about you in this whole like zero waste
Yeah.
nourishment movement.
So it definitely started at the kitchen table at my mom's house. I think a lot of people, especially, whatever, 30, 40 years ago, the mindset at the dinner table was you need to eat this food. And if you were particularly from an African American like culture, you're going to eat this food. And if you don't want it tonight, you're going to have it for breakfast or lunch, but you're going to eat it. And so that's always been embedded in me. And my mom always said, you can go back for seconds, but don't overfill your plate. So that was already there. And then when I became a single mom, just kind of due to a loss of a husband, it was just like shattering. And I'm trying to figure out how do I feed these kids on a budget because I'm also was going to school. And it really just spawned from there. I just remember having a pineapple and just thinking, what in the world can I do with this pineapple skin after I'm done with it? And upon my research, I was like, I can make it into pineapple tea. And then it just literally grew from there. And it was almost became like this fun game between me and my kids of like, what can we do where we can eliminate as much waste as possible? So when it got time around for me to go into my graduate program and we had to do a food waste challenge for a full week. I was the only student that had like less than 10% food waste.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's really dynamic. It's awesome to hear just like one that you got your kids involved, and I know like a lot of parents are always trying to like make sure their kids, I see that as a way of like helping them to feel comfortable in their spaces and knowing how to stretch resources through using this zero waste principle. I know when I reflect on like growing up, like, I feel like our moms like taught us, or my mom taught me to like expand what it is that you're using, like stretch it all the way out, which may not have been the thing for all spaces, but I do have a similar thought process of, yeah, like we're going to eat all of this food. We're not going to let this food go to waste. And that's why, like, no matter what's in the refrigerator, we can figure out a quick meal because we know how to stretch it and think through it. So.
Absolutely. And to your point, as I was going in this journey, I call it my beautiful struggle, because it was a struggle, but it was beautiful. But while I was going through that, I kept thinking about my ancestors and how they literally, like you said, would stretch things and they would make something from nothing. I mean, this is how it has expanded into black eyed peas and collard greens. All these cultural favorites that we have is because they were just given whatever scraps and leftovers and they made it into something. So I knew I needed to tap into that because it was possible.
No, that makes sense. So, you say you're from the South. What part of the South are you from?
Yes, I am. My kids always laugh at me. I'm from Lithonia, Georgia.
Lithonia, Georgia.
We can say it proper, Lithonia, Georgia. It is the city of granite.
Okay.
It's about 20 miles outside of Atlanta. It was semi-rural when I was growing up. Now Atlanta is just overly populated, so it's a metropolitan area now.
Got you. No worries. So you grew up, did you have like a garden like in the backyard, or like you grew up with that? What were some of the vegetables that you grew out there?
Oh my goodness. So my stepdad had a garden and it was a very southern household. Like you're not going to leave the house without a full belly and some food. And so, my stepdad, who that was a farmer himself, he always had like collard greens. He had rattlesnake beans. He had muscadimes. There
The
was,
grape.
yes, a grape.
Okay, 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 okay.
Would make into wine, or you
Hmm.
could eat off of it. There was green beans. There was sweet potatoes. There was squash. We were the family that every year he would put together this really big Brunswick stew. And I don't know if you know anything about Brunswick stew, but it is okay. It's a very southern dish. It actually originated from the South, but they would use raccoons and like basically like possums, whatever they could find, and grind it up. But it's kind of morphed into like using chicken or pork. But anyway, he would make that every single year in this huge like pot. And people from all the community would come out, and it was a slow process. It took like 4 days, but he would use the green beans, the corn, the tomatoes from his garden.
Oh, wow. So it has to sit for a period of time. Is that because it's like the flavors are soaking into the meat? Like, I'm very curious
Yes. So
about.
now we're going to go back to African roots. And this is
Okay.
one thing that I have learned in my culinary practices is they believe in slow food. We
Mhm.
believe in America's fast food. So
Okay.
meaning the slow food is going to be a process. So my stepdad would literally get the chicken, grind it up in an old school grinder, get
Okay.
the tomatoes, all the ingredients. He would puree it with a manual machine.
Okay.
And then from there, it was like I don't even know what you call it. It was like a black pot. And then him and his fellows would be out there, drinking beer. And so,
Mhm.
very slow process. But to your point, yes, it added in complex flavors because each day something else was added to it. And so by the time that it was all finished, it had stewed for whatever 48 hours, and no denying the best meal ever.
Aw, that's awesome. That's really dynamic. So,
Thanks.
like, I'm a little bit curious about the fact that, at the bottom, your title says chef and nutritionist. And so one of my questions is like, when did the nutrition part come into like what it is that you're working on? I know you said that you got your master's, but I was curious to hear a little bit more about the nutrition portion. I'm not sure if it froze for everyone else. Chef, are you still with me? And give her a second. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, we're connected again. Did you hear?
Woo,
It froze for a second. I was gonna say,
yes.
the nutrition part. I was curious to
Uh-huh.
understand that part. It froze on my end. Could you repeat what you said?
Sure. Can you repeat the question? Because
Yeah.
it was
No,
broken.
no worries. So I said I was making a moment to look at the fact that you had under your name chef
Mhm,
and nutritionist, and I know you
mhm,
mentioned that you got your master's.
mhm.
And is that the nutrition part? And like,
Yes.
could you tell us about that and why that's important to you in the work that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. So my journey was very long, and I truly am a testament of if you want something, go and get it. And as my best friend always told me, life is going to pass regardless. So whether you go to school or you don't, it's still going to pass. So it's a matter of what you're going to do with it. But so after just a little backup, my late husband, he was also a chef. So we would often have like Thanksgiving meals at our house. We would have competitions. My daughter at 3 years old was eating sushi because we just wanted to expand her horizons. But unfortunately, he succumbed to heart disease that also was related to, he had a gallbladder removed, he had like some kidney issues, and it was just very much out of the blue. All of a sudden, 6 months diagnosed, and then within that time, he passed.
Oh.
And so I was a chef working in a restaurant. And if you know anything about that life, it is not conducive to raising kids, especially
Mhm.
solo. And so I knew I needed to do something. So I decided to go back to school for nutrition specifically because I remember in the hospital, them giving him new medication, them giving him a new diet because he had his gallbladder removed. And I had no clue of what to do, how to start, or what attention that he will need. And so it was almost like a spark where it was like, what am I going to go to school for? And then I remember those times, and I remember those feelings of feeling hopeless
Hmm.
and uncertain because they were not using layman's terms. It was just kind of like pushing you off, like you're another number. All right, get out of here. And so I decided, it spawned from me reviewing his chart, his death certificate, to understand what cardiomyopathy was. And
Hmm.
then from there, because I have a passion for food, I knew I didn't want to deter too much from food. And that's when it was kind of brought to my attention. You can do food science, you can become a dietitian, you can, do so many different things. And so that's when I decided to go back to school. And for 10 years, that's what I did.
Is nutrition and studied that in, I think about, something specifically in the Black community where we deal with like different food related, like, I guess, diseases. I think about diabetes and like understanding like the importance of understanding what you're eating in order to have a better outcome. Do you find that some of the work that you do touches on that?
Oh, absolutely. One of my slogan is let's carry the culture without carrying the diseases associated with the culture.
Okay.
So meaning, my aunt passed away from diabetes. She had an amputated leg. We would always go to her house after church and we would have the full spread. And I associate the full spread, the mac and cheese, the collard greens, the fried chicken, cornbread, with my childhood and an identity to myself.
Hmm.
However, if there was a little bit more education about how we can level up on these particular recipes, we could still have it, but we're just going to maybe, take away, the ham hocks, or, reduce the salt levels and these things. Um, and so I find that people are very open to it, especially now because we are dying, and it oftentimes is diet related diseases. Can you imagine if when you meet your maker, you literally had a decision that you could say, wait a minute, I could probably live a little bit longer if I were to do this, if I were to reduce my sodium intake, if I was able to do this. And so the choice is ours. So I'm finding a really great response because I make great food. It's not like, oh, we're going to be eating kale and quinoa and it's no salt in there and it's, only olive oil. No, I still believe in seasonings. I still believe in herbs.
The
Um,
flavor is still
yeah, the
there.
flavor. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I feel like people are more open to hear it.
No, that makes sense. When I see your beautiful background, I think about all the flavors that go into like creating a meal and how healthy that looks, the vegetables. What would be like a meal if someone was like listening to this episode and they're like, okay, I want to try a better meal that involves nutrition but isn't that complicated? What is something that you know that people could maybe just try to whip up if they had a few ingredients in the household that could be a shift that maybe it's something that you could think of?
Sure. That is my specialty, first off, Tiana. I literally am, and that's why the name of my company is called Netta's Pantry.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes that's where we don't go to for food, right? We thank you for the shout out. We don't go into the pantry, and when we do, it's like, oh, there's nothing there. Well, that's where I come in, because I'm going to show you, just like my background. Don't think of fruit or vegetables as just that. Think of it as colors. So the more colors we eat, the more nutrients that we get. And so to answer your question, I am literally a queen of making it work. So you tell me what you have. You got beans, you got some rice, you got eggs, you got tuna fish. We have a casserole dish right there.
Okay.
And I am a huge advocate of a one pot dish because I have 2 kids and I'm going places and doing a lot of things. So I am all about getting some garlic and onions, sauteing that. That's your base right there. And then from there, you level up. You add your beans, you add your rice, you add your tomatoes, you add your peppers, whatever you got, throw it in there. And then you add your seasoning. And if you're anything like me, every African-American person I know has at least 2 cabinets full of spices. So you're good.
Have all the flavor, all the flavor. No, that's good. No,
Not missing one.
not missing one because we need that
Yeah.
flavor. That's really, helpful and insightful. I think about the one pan meals that you can make even when you're trying to eat healthier, and sometimes it's even easier. I think like that also reduces the amount of like waste in water. You're not as washing as many dishes and items such to that degree. We can even look at that as an idea of reduction in how much we're using, reduction in energy in that particular place.
Yeah.
So something that I wanted to ask you a little bit about, because we talked before, was more of like, what events are you doing this month related to like nutrition and Black
Yeah.
History Month?
So I had the wonderful opportunity earlier today to not only just cater, but also be on a panel for PNC Bank for
Okay.
their Black History Month program. And so I paired with a farmer, a BIPOC farmer, and he gave me collard greens, sweet potatoes, some lemons, and okra.
Oh, I love okra.
I do too. And so we created a menu that ties from Africa to America, and learning that a lot of my ancestors and slaves brought over rice. They brought over okra. They brought over all these different seeds, and then kind of showing the journey of them coming here from Africa, and then kind of cultivating their own culture. And so with that, I did got to do fried chicken, but I did it with a buttermilk sage fried chicken. I did Hoppin' Johns with okra, and we used Carolina Gold rice instead of the regular rice. And then I did a frittata that had collard greens, onions, and cheese in it.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so,
I'm like over here hungry. Like I thought I ate today, but that sounds delicious.
oh, and I forgot I made sweet potato biscuits as well.
Sweet potato biscuits?
Yes.
Oh, I've never had that. That sounds
Yes.
delicious.
Yes. They were, I didn't bring any food because they left no
I'm
crumbs.
sure everyone ate it up. They were excited. They were so excited to be at that event today. And so you were
Yes,
also like on a panel with the farmer. So do you work with farmers a lot?
I do. That's also my catering business. Is a farm to fork. And
Okay.
so Farmer Earl Imes, he's actually a historian at the North Carolina Museum, and he's also a farmer. And so on the panel, he talked about the history of these foods and how they came here. Then I brought in the nutritional value and then also culture. So for instance, I brought up the fact that I was not raised eating kale. I love it, but I was not. I was raised eating collard greens. And so when I went to or when I was in the graduate program for my dietetics, a lot of the foods that was quote unquote healthy was more westernized diet, was more European diet. But when you compare apples to apples, if you put a kale next to a collard green, they have very similar, like folic acid and benefits. However, one difference: collard greens have 20% more calcium than kale.
What?
But you don't think that because
I mean, the connotation that you're getting, at least at what I'm hearing, what I would assume is like, collard greens probably less healthy because of maybe how we cook it, but like just the connotation that's associated with it, less healthy. But to know that like it has higher levels of calcium than kale, I didn't know that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's what I discussed on the panel, was demystifying Southern cuisines. Yes, we're going to have our fried chicken, but we're going to counter that and balance it with high fiber foods like the black eyed peas, like the Carolina Gold, like a complex carbohydrates like the sweet potatoes and the biscuits. So I just want to show how still the same ingredients, it's just dispersed differently. That's all.
That makes sense. I think what is it? Something that you mentioned when I was at another event you were at, which like CSA.
Yes.
For like, could you like talk a little bit about that and how like homeowners could maybe, or people that are at their homes, wherever they are, could support CSAs and what that is?
Absolutely. And that was actually a question that an audience member had as well today. So to first break it down, CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And it sounds exactly what it is. You are supporting your local like food system and agriculture. So you are pairing your household with a farmer of your choosing. The beautiful thing about it is if you go on to the web and you just put in CSA near me, a lot of them will pop up. The one that I work for is in Hillsborough, and for about $25, and it depends on the farmer, but typically about $25, maybe $30 a week, you're going to get the freshest harvest from that farmer. And depending on what is being harvested, you'll get an array of colors. And so the beautiful thing with our farm is we don't just leave you hanging with a box, because sometimes we'll have Japanese eggplants in there. We'll have purple potatoes. We'll have things that maybe are not as identifiable to people. And they may be a little like frightful to try it, right? I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what the flavor is going to be like. But the great thing is what we do is we help guide you. So we'll do videos, we'll do recipes for each week, the box that you're getting, so you can try out different things.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That makes it really accessible for people.
Yes.
I know I see like supporting like the local or local farms as a way for us to, one, reduce our waste just from like how far away the fruit and vegetables are coming from. And also it can like increase our nutrition part of like eating with the seasons. I remember when I was reading about like the importance of like eating with the seasons as a solution.
Absolutely. And to your point about zero waste, oftentimes we may think, oh, well, that just means that, on my plate, I didn't eat something. But it also could mean that you just purchased groceries from the store or from your local farmer. You got this box and there is a multicolor like squash in there. And you're like, I don't know what to do with this. So you let it sit there and then it goes to waste. And so I often tell people the statistics that 40% of the methane gas coming from landfills is related to food. Food that we can control, because we have a store literally, unless you're in a food desert, most areas have a lot of stores that they can access. And so that's another reason I love CSA, is because we're going to talk about the skins of what you can do with that squash. Today I brought watermelon. I don't know if you ate watermelon in the summertime.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Have you ever had the rinds of the watermelon?
No, I don't think. I mean, I eat it, but I haven't gone any further than that. Like I might go all the way down, like as a little kid, eating down to the rind, but no.
Okay, great. So it's from an 1820 slave that actually transcribed this recipe that was given to me. And I make a sweet watermelon rind. So it's a pickled watermelon rind.
You take the watermelon rind, you pickle it?
Yep.
where did you, like, I heard you, where did you find this recipe? Because now I'm very interested. Because historic preservation is another thing that I'm really passionate about. So therefore, anytime you say that you were able to read something that was transcribed by a slave, like, this is very interesting.
Yeah. And so this is where networking helps out.
Okay.
The farmer that I was telling you, that's also a historian that works at the museum, he gave that to me. And he actually has like a blow up, like canvas version of it. And he tells the story so beautifully because if you know anything about slavery, writing anything was illegal. And that could
Mhm.
literally mean, you know, your head is cut off, is cut off. And
Yes.
so the fact that there's still an artifact, and I use her exact recipe. And she was in cursive, so you know you kind of have to
Yeah,
like
yeah, no, I just
bend it a little bit, but that's where I got it from.
mm.
And I used her method, and it has nice spices in there. And so with the panel today, we opened it up to the audience to go and come try this this watermelon pickled rind, and
Okay.
everybody loved it.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I mean, honestly, like I get goosebumps from just feeling the like the connection, to ancestors through the writing and understanding like, the ability to have that is so dynamic and powerful and that it tastes so good. It's
It's
the
so
and
good,
it's
and the
zero
more
waste,
it's
zero waste. No, like, the thought process was ingrained back then to know that you can use
Mhm.
every piece of the food and you don't have to throw it away just because you haven't figured it out, but like expanding how we use the food. That is dynamic. I'm
Yeah.
excited. That's awesome. Like I'm over here like, well, one, I need to know when your next event is. Like, how
I
can I get like I need to go and be on the list because that I'm like, man, I missed out
I
today. This
will
sounds
let you know, and that
oh,
was my last jar. However, when watermelon season comes back, I
okay, yeah,
think it's Congo watermelon, which
okay.
is, like, from Africa, like the
Mhm.
actual seed. So, it's already sweet anyway, and so once you kinda preserve that, I got you. I will
So
definitely get
you said Congo watermelon?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
so
this is a
then
good person to have as well because he grows things the old-timey way.
oh, yeah, no, definitely will be asking you about that person to know more just to get, plugged in. One of my goals this year, when I lived in California, I was plugged into the CSA a little bit more,
Yeah,
but definitely wanna get reconnected, so thanks. I know that you are here in North Carolina with
mhm.
me, specifically, like, in the Triangle. Do you all typically, like, work with other farms to, like, work together? Are there events that people can come to?
Yes. So we are on the cusp of shifting the farm that I work at in Hillsboro. It's called Spring Forest. And if you go to springforest.org, you can find out. But there's always various events, forest feasts, drum circles. And so we're revving up for the Piedmont Farm Tour. That's going to be in May, I believe.
Okay.
And so that's going to be more exposure. We really don't work with other farmers at this moment because we have 23 acres with goats and chickens
Wow.
and fig trees and apple
Mhm.
trees, peach trees. It's enough for us.
Yeah.
Um, but the goal is to expand, to have more people come in, to know more about our products. And then we also work with immigrants. So we're growing foods that are identifiable to, the Afghan communities.
So different communities, different
Mhm.
again, I think it expands the waste or reduces the waste by expanding the type of food that we have so that
Absolutely.
we're feeding the people who want certain foods versus just guessing. Something I haven't worked in a grocery store, but I have had friends that worked in a grocery store and they talked about like how much food like you're almost like guessing, like,
Yeah.
and so like reducing that guess factor I see as a way for us to reduce like waste when it comes to nutrition as well.
Absolutely. And it is on a good note. We are really the land of the plenty. Like I
Mhm.
mentioned, unless you're in a food desert, you're going to have at least probably 5 stores near you. So
Right.
in our mind, it is we can just go get more. It's not a big deal. But when you're dealing with countries outside of America that literally are trying to figure out what we're going to eat for our next meal, it is a very fine line, and we have to adopt some type of balance. Yes, go to all the 5 different stores. I know I do because Publix has certain things that Walmart or whatever store that I'm going to doesn't have. However, as I'm picking up a product, I'm saying, being mindful, am I really going to use this?
Yeah.
Am I? And if I am, think about some ideas. And if I can't come up with at least, 2 or 3 ideas I can do with it, I leave it alone.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, that's like one goes into planning. That ties into other environmental things with your resources, like, not being wasteful because financially, like just being smart, a good steward of your resources and thinking about it. I'm going to keep that in mind when I go to grocery store. If I can't think of more than 1 or 2 ways to do it, because sometimes I'm not going to lie, I might see like a recipe online. I'm like, oh, I want to try this. But like, then I don't have anything else to do, or maybe then I don't have the time to do it. So then that might go bad. But if I am starting to buy stuff with more than one use for it,
Yeah,
it's important.
absolutely. One ingredient that I always think about is herbs. Whenever you go to the grocery store to buy, if you just want like 2 sprigs of dill or cilantro, you end up with like a big pack.
Big bunch.
Yeah. And so then it's just like, I feel like a number one waster, because you bought it maybe for a meal that you saw online, but then you're like, how do I incorporate it into everything else? And so being able to showcase how you can dry out that herb, how you can add it to salads, how you can add it to an omelet. Like, herbs are not just for chicken or for meat. They could be for any and everything. Just try it.
No, put it on a salad. Okay.
Yeah.
Put it on a salad. I don't know if I thought about that until this. So yeah, put it on top of the salad. That makes sense.
I'm telling you, try it, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh, what is that flavor?
Mm-hmm.
Add some cilantro to it. Oh my gosh.
I mean, you said sage fried chicken. I was like, I hadn't thought about that until this conversation. I started using sage recently to like season chicken for like bacon chicken, but like sage fried chicken sounds really, really, really good. So I have a few more questions.
Sure.
One thing I wanted to know was like, I hear that you are connecting a lot specifically with like African cuisines. Are there any meals that you've learned about that you now cook at home or cook for like events that you have?
I do. So, fun fact, I am dating a guy that's from West Africa, and he really has opened up my mind to the practices and cooking methods.
What part of West Africa?
He's from Sierra Leone.
Okay. My husband's from Cameroon, so you gotta like, yes. So go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and so, my goal is to go there, but he's an avid cooker, and something that he does, they use potato leaves. Okay. While we may just toss the potato leaves and give them to the goats or whatever, they actually like chop them up. They fry onions, they put tomatoes in it. They pound peppers into it. And I adopted that concept, but instead of potato leaves, I use collard greens, because again, I'm not familiar with potato leaves, or I wasn't raised with it, I guess I should say. And so I do a slow process where we're building up. So we are making sure that foundation and flavor is there, as opposed to the Southern way of collard greens, which is to put everything in a pot with water and let it boil.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that is a very like African method across the board, where they love building with added in spices and then go from there.
So it takes some time. No, that's a good technique and something, to keep in mind. I know like with me, I'm always trying different foods. So like to know the understanding of like the methodology as a way of reduction in waste. Another question that came up was more so centered on when it comes to when you learned about zero waste nourishment or nutrition, what is one thing that you would encourage, I guess, people at home to try to do in order to like reduce their waste?
Well, number one is going to be mindful. That's in anything in life, whether it's your weight loss journey or, if you're planning something, it's always going to be mindful. What is your goal? What's your agenda? And then number two, look at what you already have. So when I mentioned Julia Childs, I love watching her. However, if you look at a lot of cooking shows, it paints this unrealistic picture. So it's go down to your favorite butcher shop and get, the nice, like, loin lamb, loin, go down to this grocery store and get these vegetables, and they have a nice, like, butcher paper unwrapping it. That's not ideal. I don't have time for that as a single mom, and most households I know don't either. But what I do have time for is when I get home, I'm assessing what I already have in my refrigerator, what I have in my pantry. And then from there, I'm building it. The great thing now is Chat GPT can make wonderful recipes for you if you just plug in, I got a butternut squash, an onion, and okra.
I have not thought about that at all. Like, that is a tip for all of you out there this is what I have. Give me a recipe.
And that's what it does.
Okay.
And so that's what I would heavily advise. Use what you already have.
No, that's beautiful. And then if people wanted to keep up with your journey, what's the best way to stay connected with you?
Ooh, I have two different ways. One is I'm on Instagram at Netta's Pantry. Yeah, there it is. Please follow me. I showcase my time at the farm. I do meal prep for households now. And so I customize it to your household. And if you're anything like me, you have different dietary restrictions and needs in one household, and that can be very frustrating. So I help simplify that for you. And then also I am at springforest.org. If you go onto that website, you can see me. We'll have farm dinners, we'll have cooking classes, but the goal is for you all to learn about foods that you're already going to eat anyway, but let's just level it up.
I really like the intention of like saying level it up. Like throughout this whole like session, we've been saying like the ways in which you can improve, what it is that you're eating by simply leveling it up and adding flavor. So that's been beautiful.
Thank
It's
you.
really been nice connecting with you, Chef.
You as well.
Yeah.
And just let your audience know if they have any questions. Honestly, I am so open to making sure that everyone eats healthy or eats foods that they already have and is nutritionally like full.
Yeah. And also like I heard a lot about expanding your palate, thinking about like different ways and going back to like ways that some of our ancestors used to cook.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chef. It was really enjoyable having you on. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the Environmental Answers podcast. If you have any questions, know that you can always send us your questions to askenvans.org, and we'll try to get them on for the next episode. The next episode actually will be next Wednesday at 1. We'll be actually looking into like investments, money, and when it comes to our environment and what that actually means. So let's break that apart. But thank you again, Chef. It was so good connecting. I hope that you have a good rest of your day. Oh, yes. Where's my fork? Stay well.
Thank you, too.